It is finally time to pull the engine out of this beast. It has been more than 9 years, and she has done a phenomenal job. The engine is still running, even though I cracked one iron in this very small spot. I could super glue it or JB weld it back together, but that is not the point. The point is to tear it apart and build it up even stronger. We're about to pull this out and have Abel work his magic on making this engine capable of
even more horsepower.
So I'm going to step outside because it could get a little messy. I'm going to remove the coolant from the radiator and of course the engine. Thankfully that hasn't mixed with my oil or anything crazy like that. So obviously got the pan underneath there. Oh, I actually did a really good job. What odds of that? That's hilarious. That's not the point of coolant. It's not supposed to go on your radiator. Taking off my little fan shroud. So I gotta pull that out. There we go. There. Fan shroud is off. Look at Frank's horrible attempt at drawing circles. Yeah, Frank, putting you out in blast. The way that Abel has me doing this is I'm going to obviously drain the coolant regardless, but I'm going to pull the whole radiator off. That way the engine can come forward instead of having to pull the transmission out the back and then drop it that way. The 20B has a wild oil pan where it kind of dicks around with the steering rack, so that might be a little bit of a challenge, but we will face that together. Yet another little piece to add to the puzzle. Here is the man of the hour, the radiator. Oh, dear God. I didn't hit any of the fins. How the hell did I not do that? Okay, I am not the man of the hour. This thing is really heavy, and I'm really weak. But thankfully I didn't damage any of the fins. Jesus. Sorry, little bell intercooler. Radiator. Bell intercooler radiator. I don't mean to diss anybody who says otherwise, but if somebody says you can't make 950 horsepower with a bent intercooler pipe, they're surprisingly mistaken. Look at how screwed up that pipe is. I did disconnect that from the intake manifold before pulling this pipe. This said it's disconnected, so this should just pop off. Oh, okay, I guess I'm gonna take the whole hose with it. My little PTP turbo blanket has served me very well throughout this whole adventure. Well, there you have it. That is 1 hour of work, even including all of the crap that you have to do with YouTube, which is shooting and making things interesting or attempt to be funny. But that's an hour of work on this car. That's how quick it is to take it apart. So the next couple steps include taking all of that off the exhaust manifold, good old turbo manifold there, pulling the wires gently back, and well, there's not much else left. Of course, I'm gonna have to disconnect the transmission. That's certainly going to be one of the steps. I'm definitely gonna have to take the intake manifold off because it helps me get to all my fuel system, pull all my wires back, get to every single connector, and so on. So this is coming off right now. This is the fun one. Take the air temp sensor that's hidden on the bottom side of the intake manifold off. There we go. I'm really impressed that this is the first time I've loosened this and it not be completely glued, impossibly shut to the lower intake manifold. So these last 2 bolts hold it in and it's coming out. Just pop off. Of course. God, this is such a pretty piece of equipment. Like whoever designed that over in Japan, you have a way better imagination than I do. I'm going to take my wiring harness off. This is the one that was built by me and surprisingly has worked perfectly throughout this entire process. It's really impressive. But what you guys are seeing, this is my secondary fuel rail. So those are the big boys bringing the big party. And then the primary fuel rail is hidden under here, you can see the injectors, little baby. I shouldn't even say they're baby, they're 1050s right now. I'm going up to 1700s all around, so they're gonna be the same size. But what you're seeing is cool, pretty different color wires. What I'm seeing is a trail, like a cookie crumb trail of what I've done. That way, if I mix these up, we're back in business. You might be saying, well, Rob, what about your spark plug lines here, your coils? Look at how I zip tied them. So that way, this was one trailing, one leading, two trailing, two leading, and so on. So that way I could always remember how to put them back on without colors. If you're somebody who's familiar with those IGN-1A1 coils, you'll know that you want to ground as close as possible to the spark plug. And so each of these grounds, there, and there, are for each of those coils respectively. This is my star pattern center of ground of everything. That is the point of absolute ground. You know, for the ECU comes straight off of that, obviously for the battery, everything. That is the center, because then you minimize the amount of noise that you're going to get on the car. So this is the only line I really hardwired that I'm gonna have to cut and make some sort of connector so I can remove this quicker. This is the fan relay wire to the ECU. So it tells the ECU tells the fan relays to turn on and of course cool your radiator. There we go. We're slowly pulling everything back properly, gently. Come on back. Follow me. Except for you, you stupid deaf eye gauge. Well, like I said, there you have it. There's all my wires, but the overall look is beautiful. Now it's time to pull the fuel system and any sort of auxiliary components over here, and then of course the rest of the exhaust. Okay, that was the primary rail. Here's the secondary. Okay, didn't expect it to come out of the primary. This step is getting a little dirty, so you have to excuse if I miss a couple steps on the camera, but I've removed this banjo bolt that contains my temp sensor and my pressure sensor. And so then that line is, of course, going to my oil coolers and oil return on the engine. So both of these have to go, so all my oil lines are out of the way. All right, oil return line. Oh, geez. Oh, okay. There's oil in the oil coolers. That makes perfect sense. Here we are 2 hours into the project of disassembling it, and it actually looks pretty close to finished. Granted, it's not, but the major components next are the exhaust manifold and the transmission, and quite frankly, most of this could be pulled as it is. So pretty impressive how quick it is, like I said, to remove parts and to work on a race car. I have such mixed feelings about my downpipe, considering that it has lasted me through multiple turbos, but it does some weird things, like it's fitting weird here, and then of course underneath the car it's just a complete height clusterfuck. You know, that's stock. That's how it is riding right now, and it hits the ground as if I'm on bags. But the problem now is that it wedges itself between this and this, and I'm trying to get it apart. You stay out of there. Time to pull this. Out comes the Tile 60 mil, which has been a phenomenal piece on this car so far. Curved tip. You stay right there. Oh, come on. Now the exhaust housing, if it wants to come out. There we go. That's simple. Oh my god, that's a pain in the ass. This is my saving grace right here, the exhaust back pressure sensor line. This thing has been phenomenal at telling me what the hell is going on inside this exhaust manifold. Seriously guys, if you're looking for more information on how your engine is doing and the back pressure in it, these guys, Full Function Engineering, have done a phenomenal job on this thing. When it connects directly to your ECU like the Adaptronic, you don't want that nasty hot air going straight to your ECU, so this thing does a phenomenal job of filtering that. Here comes the part that started this whole process, the turbo manifold. Nice little T4 outlet, which surprises most people that you're able to flow so damn much. But this thing is what's made the power. I used to it until I just dropped it. This thing is what's made all this power so much possible. Well, that's excellent English there, but I'm gonna leave that edit in. This thing has been phenomenal and has done a great job at using such a small interface, a T4 housing flange, to make this sort of power. Normally you think that's a T6 or something crazy. Nope, that one makes it happen. Thank God this thing's still reusable. These things are whatever, 70 bucks a pop. With all the bolts off now, I suspect that this thing is going to be a pain in the ass to pull off because it's still more or less glued on. And my first check confirms that this thing is not coming off, so I'm gonna have to be a little bit more forceful with this beast. Thankfully that didn't require much other than pushing from this side over with both hands, and this is off. Well, here you go. That looks like a pretty naked engine bay. Surprisingly, within only a couple hours of work, she is ready for the transmission to be coming out. You know what? Hold on to the transmission. Let's take the rest of this off first. So this part's bittersweet. This is the water pump and all the coolant crap, but it's bittersweet that I'm taking this off because I finally got it working where it wasn't leaking anymore. And of course, taking it off just opens that can of worms back up. Time to come off. Quit playing. You just... Okay. Thank God I did not crack my phone in that. Well, it doesn't look like I've changed much since the last shot. It really has done quite a bit. I've removed all of the bolts from the bell housing to the back of the engine, and then I removed the bolts off of the engine mounts. So this thing is pretty much ready for the engine hoist. So with gender being a confusing thing at this point in life, I will still say this and be whatever kind of politically incorrect in saying that this is probably one of those manly machines that you can use. You truly do feel like a man, or at least the testosterone in your body surges when you use a cherry picker. This thing is cool, it's fun to use, you feel like a man setting it up, and of course that's exactly what's gonna go on here. This end plugs into chains that you wrap around your motor or connect into certain spots on your engine, and then you hoist it up and of course back out. We're gonna leave the transmission in, which is fascinating to me. I'm gonna see how that works. That's the first time I've ever done that way, but this machine is doing all of the intelligent physics to make it possible. Oh, she is. Oh. Yeah, isn't that a small clutch? That just blows me away that works. At least it works on holding the power. I don't know if it'll hold the launch. My idea of cheap premix working out for me. I'm surprised I've not blown this motor. Look at it, you can see it pooling right back there in the middle. We've got rust, we've got premix. How the hell this thing stayed together, I don't know. There you have it. That is the engine out for the first time in at least 6 years. The engine's been together for almost 10 now, which is the big number everybody's fascinated by. But I did have it out once briefly in block form while I was replacing my transmission. I just wanted to see how the car worked and try and rewire the entire chassis. This is very fascinating. A couple things come to mind immediately. As you can see the rust inside of each of the irons. That could be because of my water injection. That could be because of moisture. There could be a lot of things. It's a lot of rust, and that's pretty impressive that it works. Secondly, take a look at all the premix oil just pooling inside of the irons. That's actually pretty bad. So what most people don't know is I've used almost every type of premix there is, between the really quality stuff to the synthetic to the non-synthetic to whatever the weed whackers use. Legitimately have used every type of premix possible. Those of you that are obsessed with oil and all that, I'll be honest, I've used a variety of things, and we're sitting here with an engine that still runs, just a cracked iron. You're gonna see in the next video just how bad it is on the inside, so maybe that premix does not work. But again, we didn't pull it because of the premix, we pulled it because of getting a little too lean. Now it's time to use the degreaser to get the entire engine bay cleaned out and looking pretty. This thing is going to be built back up for the final time, just a nice clean build,
and that's where she's gonna sit. So she's gotta look good for the bottom up.
Even more horsepower.